Okay. So I think we're good now. So we just started the recording on this. So I see some folks putting in their answers for why they're exercising. A lot of different reasons. Mental health benefits. I love that. Perfect, perfect. So a lot of us, we're being physically active for a variety of reasons. And so, just to kind of recap the types of options we have, sometimes we have those that are engaging in physical activity exclusively for weight loss purposes, whatever that situation was that prompted that. It's like, dude, I gotta get on the treadmill. I gotta lose some weight. Some of us might have that kind of mindset. For some of us, it may be related to maybe some weight gain goals and wanting that weight gain to come from modifying our body composition, that weight gain coming from increasing that lean muscle mass, lean body mass in general. Maybe we're deciding to be physically active for chronic health prevention or management. And then would love some weight loss with that. Some are just like, look, I want to exercise because I want to be stronger in general. I'm not necessarily monitoring my weight, but I just know I have heard that physical activity is good to be strong, but I don't have an agenda with my weight. And then some of us are becoming physically active because we're training for a specific type of event or competition. Maybe you are like Dr. Stephen Hood and you are a triathlete. Maybe you are competing in a strongman competition. Maybe you have decided you're going to go out for being a police officer with UAPD and you're needing to pass all of the body conditioning tests that they have you do as the application process. And then there can be other reasons as well. And so it was important for me to kind of get to know what everybody's goals were. And it seems like we're kind of all over the board. So when it comes to physical activity and nutrition, really what I do want to say with this is that with today's presentation, I know many of us have goals of weight loss, and that's not to say I won't speak to that, but just know that the nutrition recommendations that are being brought to you today that would really fall in line with any sports dietitian that you interact with or any dietitian as a whole, it's really focused on eating in a way that's going to fuel your exercise. And if we are fueling ourselves in a way that's intentional for our exercise, we're going to perform better during our exercise, which means we may potentially lose weight, if we're going to gain muscle. And so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. And I'm also curious too, you can see on the screen, what we eat helps determine how we'll perform during physical activity. So we'll have more energy. We're also looking at preventing injury, also gaining and maintaining muscle. And I wanted to share just a quick story. I remember several years ago, this was definitely before the pandemic, and I think before I had children, I was in a group personal training class at the rec center. It was myself and a few other colleagues that worked across campus, and someone in our group had ended up passing out during burpees, which who wouldn't pass out during burpees? Like, they're of the devil. I hate them, but wonderful exercise. And so, we were asking this individual, like, oh my gosh, like, did you eat anything? This workout was like at 5:30 in the afternoon. And this individual said, like, oh, I had a salad at my desk at 11, but I haven't had anything since then. My salad, had a ton of veggies and a little sprinkle of cheese and a little bit of dressing. And so, we're all freaking out because this person has passed out. We're trying to get some Gatorade, get some carbs in her with that glucose, get some electrolytes in her, definitely felt very weak in that moment. And so I'd love to know how many of you feel like there have been experiences where you can tell that how you ate definitely affected how you performed in terms of exercise or competition. And this could be both in a positive or negative way. You might say, oh yeah, like, I totally remember times where I ate XYZ and that was a terrible choice, or I ate XYZ and it was an awesome choice. So let me know if you kind of had that experience. I know some folks have raised their hands. If you want to share in the chat, too little protein before the gym, dehydration was a problem. We'll talk about that. So I think that we can all speak from a personal perspective when we say, yes, I have experienced knowing how I eat can affect how I perform in terms of exercise. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are doing this. I like to do short runs without eating, like 3 miles. Can you touch on the benefits of exercise while fasting and how to do it safely? Absolutely. So we'll be covering that as well. Okay. So again, because I know that many of us may be choosing exercise because we have some very specific weight loss goals, I think sometimes I can freak out my clients when I talk about eating a certain way or eating a certain amount in order for them to perform better exercising. And they're like, hold on, wait, this seems counterintuitive. I'm trying to lose weight and you're trying to pack all these calories on me. And I do want to clarify and say, instead of thinking about it as eating more for weight loss, I think we can call it eating adequately. So I think it really probably depends on where you're currently eating right now. Are you eating at like too low of a calorie deficit? And we want to make sure that you're eating enough, because to me, if you're not eating enough to where you feel like you can really kill it in the gym, then it's not really helpful. Because if you're going into that Orange Theory workout or whatever you're doing and you're feeling sluggish and you're not really getting to perform the way you want to, we're missing the opportunity to get that calorie burn or to really maximize the weights that we want to use. So really just think about it as, how can I eat to perform better in the gym, and using how I perform in a gym as a way to achieve my goals. And so really, I like to look at this through the lens of improving overall body composition and strength and performance, as opposed to just looking at it exclusively through this weight loss lens. Because I think if we all had this goal of, hey, no matter what, I just want to see the scale go down, that can be a tricky place to be, because people can do some wonky things just to exclusively see numbers drop on this scale that aren't necessarily health enhancing, for lack of a better word. So I think if we can shift that mindset to, let me think about how I can nourish myself in a way that really complements how I perform exercise wise, that can be extremely helpful. So in terms of nutrition for improved performance and why we want to eat a certain way before we exercise or do some type of intense physical activity, for one, you can see we're going to have increased energy, stamina, and speed, improved performance overall. I know I mentioned injury prevention, also decreased recovery time, decreased loss of muscle tissue, and just overall improved health. So kind of walking into this, before I actually go to that carbohydrate slide, just to kind of let you know what we'll be talking about today, I do want to break down a little bit about our macronutrients, your carbohydrates, protein, and fat, what the specific role of those macronutrients are in relation to providing us energy during our exercise. And then we're going to specifically be talking about what our pre-workout nutrition would look like, whether that be a pre-workout meal or a pre-workout snack. We're going to be talking about your recovery nutrition, so that post-workout nutrition. We're going to be talking about some examples of that, the timing of some of those meals and snacks, depending on what time of the day that you're working out, depending on the amount of time that we have left in the presentation. I do have some supplemental nutrition information that I'll be sharing as well. And we'll certainly be talking about hydration goals and just some other things that kind of complement that exercise process, even what the role of caffeine is when it comes to exercise performance too. Okay, so first off, carbohydrates. Unfortunately, my best friend, carbohydrates tend to be very controversial in the fitness, wellness, and weight loss industry at times. But if you were to talk to anyone who is an avid gym goer or a professional athlete or just a sports dietitian in general, they're going to let you know that carbohydrates are our body's primary fuel source. Really, at the chemical level, our brain runs at its highest level of efficiency when it actually has glucose, aka carbohydrates. Yes, our body can run off of alternative fuels when carbohydrates are not available, but they're not, the body's not necessarily going to be running at its highest level of efficiency. If you have questions about keto, Miranda, let's schedule a completely separate presentation, because I can geek out on all of that stuff for y'all. Both the good and the things of concern with keto that you might want to think about. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that there because I feel like there'd be questions about that. So when we're thinking about athletic performance, it is going to be the most important nutrient for athletic and exercise performance. And you can see on your screen, it says carbs should be eaten and drank at all meals and before and after exercise. And I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, she's just trying to shove carbs all in my face. This is going to be a very intentional amount of carbohydrates, definitely amount that's going to fuel our workout. And really the reason why carbohydrates are so beneficial to us in terms of giving us energy, that chemically by design, they are built to be broken down pretty quickly to energize whatever activity we're about to do. So that's going to be an optimal situation for someone who is active. So if you're trying to eat something to give you fuel before an activity, carbohydrates are just going to be a really nice way to do that because they are built by design to give us this energy and to be able to be broken down pretty quickly to energize us. And so a lot of times when I am working with my various types of athletes, we will be eating anywhere between half to 2/3 of our plate being carbohydrate based. That doesn't mean it all has to be starch based or it has to be starch based at all, because I have some clients that do have certain food allergies where we might be utilizing a fruit or dairy product as a source of carbohydrate, whether that be a cup of Greek yogurt or a banana or a glass of orange juice or anything else. And so again, I think that if we are managing certain health conditions, maybe we are diabetic or there's other reasons that we're trying to be intentional with the amount of carbohydrate that we're taking in. Maybe we're not necessarily fitting into this mold of 1/2 to 2/3 of our plate. But I think it's going to be really important to partner with your dietitian in terms of determining what is appropriate, because we certainly want to make sure there's that fine balance of eating enough carbohydrate to fuel that workout and also be cognizant of any kind of chronic health conditions that you have. And so when we think about the various types of carbohydrates that are there, you'll see we have all of our different types of grains. We have milk-based carbohydrates, fruits, and then other. And really just switching over to this next slide, when you think about the quote unquote other types of carbohydrates that are out there, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, why is she putting candy and sweets as a source of carbohydrate? Well, I'm putting that there because they are sources of carbohydrate, but it's not necessarily meaning that that is what we should use as that carbohydrate fuel before exercise. Because again, when we think about something like a candy bar or so like a sugar sweetened beverage or whatever else, yes, there's carbohydrate in there, but that's going to run through us pretty quickly where we're going to have a quick sugar rush and a crash. And also there's usually not other health enhancing components to that food in terms of recommended vitamins and minerals. So it's not necessarily going to be helpful to us overall. And so you're really wanting to look at more of a complex carbohydrate as a source of energy intake. And that's going to be more of your grain-based carbohydrates that have a little bit of fiber to them, maybe having some fruit as well. And when we think about where carbohydrate is stored in our body, how our body uses it during the exercise process. You can see the graphic in the corner of your screen where we have your liver glycogen. And basically glycogen is just the terminology that we use for stored carbohydrate. So you've got some stored carbohydrate that is in our liver that helps maintain our blood glucose throughout the day and especially during exercise. And then we also have some glucose that is stored in our muscles, and that's going to be supplying energy during that muscle contraction too. This is important to know so that whenever we're talking about that quote unquote recovery nutrition after a workout, part of that recovery process is basically reloading glycogen back into these organs for next time. So I think that, that we want to make sure that we're taking that into consideration. And I'm just going to take a pause to look at the chat. Yes, proportion of carbs is quite shocking. I'm going to show you how it can feel less scary. And again, when I think about who all is participating in this presentation today, I know that there was going to be just a variety of folks. So there could be some folks that, you know, hey, your daily exercise is a 30-minute walk versus my folks that are probably going to be a little bit more intense in their training. So we can certainly individualize that. And again, I think that if we can get out of a mindset of thinking about those carbohydrates exclusively coming from starch-based sources, and they can come from other sources like fruit or a dairy-based carbohydrate, that can make it feel less quote unquote carb heavy. But just know that there's definitely a purpose to having a good amount of carbohydrate in there. It's definitely not me trolling you, trying to secretly make you not reach your goals, but I really want to enhance your exercise experience. Okay, so protein. Everybody loves protein, especially when they think about exercise. I feel like protein is the golden child in the fitness industry when it comes to the various macronutrients. And protein is definitely important for building and repairing muscle and other tissues. It can be used for energy when carbohydrates are not available. I put an asterisk by that because I do want to stop and share what that process looks like. So I'm sure we've all been very familiar with someone who has been on a low carb diet for weight loss or whatever else. And so I mentioned just a second ago that carbohydrates are your body's preferred fuel source. Well, if you have an individual who is not eating enough carbohydrate, whether they're doing that intentionally or unintentionally, your body kind of goes into freak out mode at the cellular level. It's like, oh my gosh, Sheena's not feeding us enough carbohydrate. We need something else for energy. What do we do? The next thing that your body is going to tap into for energy is going to be protein. But instead of breaking down the protein that you just had in your protein shake or the grilled chicken that you had in your salad or any other dietary protein you just ate, it's easier chemically for your body to immediately break down protein that's already part of your body, especially our muscle tissue. And when you think about your muscle tissue, it's kind of like a sponge that holds a lot of our body water because we're anywhere between 60 to 75% water. So if the body is breaking down protein in your muscle tissue, that muscle is getting smaller and smaller and it's squeezing out a ton of water weight, which looks super exciting on the scale. We just don't realize where that weight loss is coming from. It's not until your body has broken down a certain amount of protein in that muscle tissue that it finally has the energy to switch over into fat burning. And it goes into fat burning as a last resort just because it's so daggum hard for the body to burn fat. You know, burning fat is a very energy intensive process. And so when we think about, oh, you can burn fat on a low carb diet, yes, you can, but there's this intermediate process that happens where unfortunately your lean body mass takes a little bit of a hit in that transition period. And so what I like to do as someone's dietitian, whether I am working with an athlete or non-athlete, is I'm trying to preserve as much of your lean body mass as possible. So when I've worked with my individuals one-on-one, the tactics that I use, I would not label them as low carb. I certainly wouldn't label them as high carbohydrate either. I would probably call it more carbohydrate intentional. Or carb strategic, because I want to make sure that you're eating enough carbohydrate to fuel your workouts and to have enough energy from those carbohydrates that can facilitate jumping straight into fat burning without having to mess with that precious muscle tissue. And so that's going to look different for everyone based on the type of physical activity that they're doing. And also too, just like anything else, I don't want anybody to eat an excessive amount of anything, carbohydrates or otherwise, because that could lead to some weight fluctuations, potential weight gain. And if that's not part of their goals, then I want to respect and prevent that. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that there. So again, you didn't think that I was freaking you out about the carbohydrates. So when I mentioned using energy for carbohydrates when carbs are not available, protein can be used. That's going to be that existing protein in your body. So extra protein not needed may be stored as fat. And that's just kind of a blanket statement where if we eat anything in excess, whether that be too many carbs, too much protein, too much fat, all of that could potentially be stored as fat. So I wanted to make sure that I added that in there. And for the most part, for my active individuals, protein should take up about a third of your plate. And so some different protein sources, folks would be getting it from various animal products. If you are vegan, vegetarian, beans are a great source, nuts are a great source. And then lacto-ovo folks could get that from eggs and cheese and dairy. And also too, when we're taking a look at protein, I don't know how many of you would be interested in this information, but if you are looking at some calculations for how much protein would be appropriate for me, maybe as a very active strength training individual, the research indicates that really when we're looking at the anabolic effects and benefits of a high protein diet really don't extend past about 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight, or if we're doing this in kilograms, 1.8 grams per kilogram. So for example, this would be around 132 grams for a 165-pound male. The Sports and Human Performance Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics recommends the ranges at the bottom, which would be 1.6 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight for strength training individuals. So this would be anywhere between 146 to 155 grams of protein per day for a 200-pound individual. And when I've worked with clients before, whether that has been students, folks in the community, our fellow faculty and staff, that number can seem a little bit surprising, especially when they've been eating a lot more protein than that. And so I think that if you think about the types of products that are out on the market right now with various protein powders, it can be so easy to get all this protein. But just know that sometimes you do have these products that are out there where it is a marketing ploy. And that's not to say that that product would be dangerous for every individual, but I think sometimes more is just more, not necessarily better. So, you know, if you're having concerns about, oh, am I eating enough protein? Sometimes my vegetarian athletes or just folks that are physically active will think like, oh man, how do I supplement my protein? You may not really need that much. And again, depending on the type of physical activity you're doing and what your body conditioning goals are, I think we can sometimes just get lost in that mindset of like, oh my gosh, I got to have all the protein. And so you want to be careful with that. And also too, knowing your own health history, if there's any kidney issues within your family where maybe a very high protein diet could be problematic, you want to take that into consideration. Okay. So with fat, our body does need some fat. So 20 to 35% of our calories. We want to avoid high fat meals and foods, but this does not mean avoiding fat in our diet. I'll be talking a lot about our pre and post workout nutrition and what fat is going to look like there. From a cellular perspective, overall body perspective, this is going to be needed for healthy cells, our hormones, skin and hair. We also need to make sure that we have dietary fat in our diet, just to make sure that our body composition stays at a certain amount where we can effectively absorb fat soluble vitamins. And you want to focus on unsaturated fats when possible. As far as various sources of fat, where sometimes I'll have clients that say, what's a source of fat? Butter, margarine, salad dressing, sour cream. You'd be getting fat in your gravies, nuts, oil, mayonnaise, cream cheese, avocado. In the chat, feel free to share with each other how you incorporate your quote unquote healthy fats in your diet. A lot of times I'll have clients that will share what they've found works for them. I feel, again, with the boom of keto, you have so many individuals that will talk about, you know, all the different ways that they're getting fat in their diet. And Rebecca, I saw that you had your hand raised. Feel free to unmute yourself with a comment or question, or you can put it in the chat as well. Okay. And while everybody interacts there, talking about our pre-exercise or pre-performance nutrition, really what that's going to look like in terms of how we eat before a workout, it's going to be specifically carbohydrate based. I'm going to walk you through what that looks like. For someone who maybe does a really early morning workout, or just the thought of getting in any kind of fuel in their system before a workout doesn't sound great. Liquid nutrition maybe something that we're considering. And we want to include some small to moderate amounts of protein in that pre-workout meal or snack, just because that protein is going to help build and repair that muscle tissue. And so adequate protein before our exercise can also help reduce some muscle soreness. We'll talk about those amounts. And we want to choose a pre-workout meal or snack that's low in fat and fiber and conservative in protein to ensure optimal digestion. So, okay. So let's first start with your pre-workout or pre-competition meal. And I'm going to emphasize the word meal because this would essentially be something that happens 2 to 4 hours before your exercise. Certainly we wouldn't want to eat a meal amount pretty close to the time of our workout. So when we're thinking about that pre-workout meal, this is going to be something that's high in complex carbs, and we want to limit fat, protein, and fiber. And the reason we want to limit fat, protein, and fiber is because fat, protein, and fiber kind of take a little while to digest. I mentioned earlier that carbohydrates generally are just built to be digested and broken down pretty quickly so that it can energize whatever we're about to do. So that's kind of the optimal situation. Well, if you are about to work out or maybe do some type of athletic performance and you have a pre-workout meal or snack that's too high in fat, protein, or fiber, all of your blood flow is going to be going to your gut to try to just deal with that, when you really need that blood flow going evenly everywhere to all of your limbs to be able to perform those fine-tuned movements that you're doing during your exercise. That blood flow is how those body parts are receiving oxygen. So we don't want your body distracted by having to do a high digestion process while it's also trying to be physically active at the same time. Certainly too, we don't want to overeat. When we're thinking about hydration, 16 to 20 ounces of water or sports drink about 3 to 4 hours before. These are some similar recommendations to what I give our various athletes on campus, including our adapted athletics when I'm working with my Crimsonettes and color guards. So when you see some of these recommendations, just know that these apply to a lot of our active students as well. So an example of a pre-workout meal would be something like grilled chicken, maybe with a cup and a half of pasta with a little bit of tomato sauce and fruit. So we got some protein in there, but just notice we did a grilled chicken instead of something fried, something not overly greasy. Maybe it's a 6-inch sub sandwich with some deli meat, some fruit, and half of a granola bar. Maybe we decide to do some baked chips with that instead. If you are doing more of a mid-morning based workout, maybe your breakfast would be something like some cereal with milk, a banana, and a cup of orange juice. Maybe if we wanted to add a little bit of extra protein in there, we'd have a boiled egg with that too, where it's not overwhelming. So again, with these meals, they are going to be more substantial than a snack, but it's not going to be anything overly heavy. And you know yourself the best in terms of optimal time frame for digestion. I will say, the 2 to 4 hours before an activity is really the average. That's not going to apply to everyone. I know during my time, again, pre-pandemic, several years ago, when I used to do Orange Theory at 5:30 in the afternoon, I had to be really careful about what time I ate my lunch because it just took a while for me to digest stuff. And if you have a lunch meal or whatever else that it tends to be higher in fat, that digestion process takes a little bit longer, and whatever your preference level is for having something on your stomach prior to a workout is going to come into play. So would love for you guys to share in the chat. Do you feel like the 2 to 4 hours hours tends to be a good window for you in terms of eating a meal compared to when you exercise. I know this doesn't apply to my early morning workout folks, but for those of you that work out after work, do you feel like 2 to 4 hours is enough time? Do you need a larger gap of time like me? Or are you able to stomach something substantial in a smaller time frame compared to that? So I'd love for folks to share those experiences too. And yes,
2 questions in the Q&A.
Perfect. Okay. I see those, and Stephen, I will be addressing that. So thank you. And thank you, Miranda, for making sure that I took a look at that. Okay. Sorry, you guys, why are my slides going everywhere? Okay. So next, let's talk about your pre-workout snacks. So so if we're looking at your snack, obviously that's going to be a smaller amount that's going to happen closer to that physical activity. So anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour before. And this is where you're going to focus pretty much exclusively on carbohydrates. Around 30 grams is recommended. That would be something comparable to a banana, maybe a granola bar, or a 16-ounce regular sports drink to be able to get those carbohydrates. We want to try to avoid any fat or fiber, and then having your fluid intake as well. And so some example of some pre-workout snacks here, that could be a sports drink, crackers, fruit juice, fruit, pretzels. I've got some additional examples that I'll be sharing with y'all as well. And so again, with this pre-workout snack, because it's more snack-based as opposed to a meal, this is where it's going to be a smaller amount. It is going to be mostly carbohydrates at this point. We don't want to do anything, too crazy here. And so, and this is going to be the most important when we're doing a lot of cardio-based activity or high intensity interval training. With strength training, you can have a little bit more protein in there. I would still advise against any fat or fiber at this point, but with strength training exclusively, and there's not going to be a lot of cardio in your session, then you could go a little bit higher in protein with that pre-workout snack if needed. Stephen, you just asked, why is the fiber bad before the workout? Fiber in particular, again, because that's going to slow down that digestion process. You just don't want your all of that blood flow being concentrated on just working on digestion when you're trying to be physically active. So, and that's not to say if there was like a gram of fiber in your granola bar that you were eating or whatever else, we just don't necessarily want a high fiber product as part of that pre-workout meal. Like there's going to be hopefully some other form of carbohydrate in that product that you're eating. But overall, when we're thinking about limiting that fiber, it's really through the lens of digestion purposes. But I've also had some athletes that have said that that's not been an issue for them. I just know our standard across the board for most sports dietitians, when we look at those recommendations for pre-workout nutrition, it's going to be really intentional about limiting that fat, fiber, and a certain level of protein, because we're not wanting to have your body focus on just doing massive amounts of digestion when you're doing a physical activity routine. So that's a great thing to ask. Okay. During your workout, for the most part, when we're thinking about hydration purposes, 4 to 8 ounces of water every 15 to 20 minutes. This is something that I use with my athletes on campus. You may feel that this isn't necessary for you, depending on how well hydrated you were prior to the workout. But in general, if we're thinking about someone doing some high intensity physical activity and working on those hydration goals, 4 to 8 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes. For my individuals that are doing some really intensive stuff and maybe they're working out outside and it's longer than an hour, there's some intense sweating that's happening, something that's going to replenish carbohydrates like a sports drink could be ideal as well. But for the most part, water is going to be is going to be, pretty good. That's going to take care of that hydration for you. Okay, now with our post-workout / post-performance meal, also known as recovery nutrition, we want to try to eat as soon as possible to maximize recovery. And this is going to be ideally within an hour of that exercise. So whenever we are physically active, whether we're doing cardio or strength training, typically we're wanting those muscles to get stronger, have better endurance, have all the gains, all those things. Well, when we do those exercise movements, we get little micro tears in our muscles. And the way that those muscles get stronger, have better endurance, all of the things is going to be that repair process from those micro tears that happen during the physical activity. And in order to enhance those micro tears healing and becoming stronger, we want to get in that recovery nutrition. We want to make sure that we're getting in both protein and carbohydrate in there, because we want to make sure that we're getting some protein into those muscles so that that can really benefit those muscles and the growth of those muscles. But we also want to make sure that we're eating enough carbohydrate to enhance that process, and also make sure that there's carbohydrate that's going back into our liver and muscle stores, so that glycogen that I was talking about earlier. So we're going to be looking at selecting a meal, or if we don't have time, or if we don't have a meal timed right after a workout, maybe it's going to be a recovery snack instead. This is something where we're going to want both carbohydrate and protein there. And we want to limit having a high fat meal after that workout, just because, again, fat takes a while for the body to digest. And if you have an overly greasy meal, your body, your GI system is mostly going to be trying to digest that fat that's within that meal, and it's not going to adequately and efficiently absorb the protein and carbohydrate that is also in that meal. So I think having something that is conservative in fat, so if you are doing something where there's salad dressing or avocado, or vegetables cooked like roasted with some oil, like that's okay. Like fat can be part of that meal. You just don't want anything overly greasy because that is going to take away from your body trying to absorb the carbohydrate and the protein that it needs for that recovery nutrition. And a good way to think about this, why carbs and protein. So one of my favorite sports dietitians is Marie Spano. She's actually the sports dietitian for the Atlanta Braves. I've interacted with her several times at some conferences and just really enjoy her work. And she's very good at giving her athletes some good analogies for really just kind of stating why we eat the things that we want to eat in terms of performance. And so one of the best ways I've ever heard her describe the benefits of carbohydrates and protein, especially in recovery nutrition, is that you can think of building muscle, building that lean body mass, like building a house, where protein is going to be your raw material and your carbohydrates are going to be your construction workers. So you could be eating all of this protein, have all of this raw material available, but if you don't have enough construction workers to actually do something with that, then it's not going to be beneficial. And to the same effect, you could eat all these carbs, but if there's not any raw material to really help with that build, you're not getting in enough protein, then that's not going to be helpful either. So really thinking about your carbs and protein as being each other's wingman. And when we think about other components of our diet, so, I know Stephen was asking earlier about vegetables. So if we're thinking about different non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, carrots, like all the different things that I love, you want those to be part of your meal. Definitely, those are going to have those micronutrients that we really want, those vitamins and minerals. And really, when you think about non-starchy vegetables, unless they're breaded and deep fried, they're pretty much just water, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So they can really enhance our hydration goals. We're here in the summer where people eat a lot more produce. They're going to be eating salads. They're going to be eating raw and roasted vegetables, all these different things. So that can help with hydration goals because many of these vegetables are over 90% water. So we've got that going for us there. As a dietitian, I want my folks to eat their vegetables. I want you to be able to enhance your meals with those veggies. However, when we're thinking about using vegetables in a like pre or post workout meal, I wouldn't necessarily rely on those exclusively to get the macronutrients that we need to enhance our performance. So they're going to be playing a role in terms of those micronutrients, you know, your vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, E, K, all of those things. But when we're thinking about macronutrient contribution in terms of the energy that we need to perform in that exercise or the recovery nutrition that is going to be happening after the workout, we're going to be looking at some other food groups. But that's not to say that because I'm not exclusively talking about vegetables that they're not a role in our diet. So just want to make sure I mention that. Okay, and now I do want to shift gears to hydration. I'm going to talk a little bit about hydration, make sure that I take a peek at the chat and the Q&A and address all of that. So in terms of hydration, you know, really we want to make sure that you are staying hydrated enough so that you can perform well. This is going to help improve your ability to recover quickly from training and competition, minimize your muscle cramps, enhance mental function, decision-making, concentration, and motor control. And also support effective immune defenses. When we're thinking about also how this plays into our exercise performance, if we're not well hydrated, then we're not going to perform well when we're at the gym. And you don't want to wait until you're thirsty. Sometimes your body will mimic the feeling of hunger when it's actually thirsty. So if you've just eaten a meal or you've just eaten a snack, and then 30 minutes later, maybe an hour later, or maybe just 15 minutes later, you feel hungry again, I like to do something called the water test. And that would be having a glass or bottle of water and then waiting about 10 minutes and then reassessing that hunger level. If that water took care of that hunger feeling, it was probably more of a hydration issue than a hunger issue. And I think it can be really helpful to be as proactive with your hydration as possible. One thing that I actually tell a lot of our athletes, specifically the adapted athletics that I work with one-on-one, is that if they have a big tournament that's happening on Saturday, I want to make sure they're already thinking about their hydration on Monday or Tuesday. We want to go ahead and load up those cells with as much hydration as possible. Because I think that if we're not being well hydrated, our body's going to produce a lot of antidiuretic hormone, basically a hormone to hold on to water weight as much as possible. And that's where we're going to feel puffy. We're not going to feel our best. So we want to make sure that that hydration is adequate. If you're thinking, oh, how do I know if I'm drinking enough water? We want to make sure that that urine is clear to pale yellow. You may be taking some type of medication or supplement that changes that color. So I'm not necessarily talking about those situations, but for the most part, our goal is to have clear to pale yellow urine. And again, that body will sometimes mimic the feeling of hunger when it's actually thirsty. So keep that in mind. With some signs and symptoms of dehydration, you can see maybe it's just getting tired very quickly in your training session, maybe having trouble tolerating heat, having a lot of muscle cramps or headaches during your physical activity, nausea and vomiting, heart rate elevated above the normal response for what would be appropriate for that level of intensity. So definitely we want to make sure that we're proactive with that hydration. I am going to talk about caffeine in just a second, but I'm going to take a pause to take a look at the chat and the Q&A. Perfect. Yes, you will definitely receive the PowerPoint. I have some extra supplemental information that's going to be within the presentation that I want to make sure that y'all have access to that. Oops. Okay. And then in the Q&A, how would you recommend using smoothies for post-workout and recovery? Anything to make sure include in smoothie ingredients? Yes, I've got some smoothie recommendations that are coming up. I love that all of your questions are coinciding with stuff that we're going to have in the slides. Okay, so caffeine. I want to make sure that I mentioned this and really wanted to exclusively make sure that it was within the slides so that this is information that you can refer back to as well. So when we think about the benefits of caffeine on exercise performance, it can delay muscular fatigue. The research is not completely consistent with this, but there have been some indications that this is a benefit that folks that are physically active will experience. Also, too, when we think about overall exercise or athletic performance in relation to having caffeine as part of that experience, you'll see people will say like, oh, I do better with jumping, throwing, sprinting, muscular strength and endurance. And then there's also some recommendations on the dosage for what that looks like. But also too, I like to point out, when should we consume caffeine? So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, I indicated anywhere between 45 to 60 minutes before you want it to peak in your bloodstream. And so we want to be careful with that amount. Most of the time I tell folks not to go over 350 to 400 milligrams per day. Your tolerance may be different than others, but you also too, if you exercise in the later part of the day and you're wanting to use caffeine as part of that experience, just be mindful of how well you tolerate caffeine and how that affects your sleep. On average, it takes about 3 to 4 hours for caffeine to be completely eliminated from someone's system. And so if you have trouble going to sleep at night, this could affect that. For those of you that work out earlier in the morning, then having the caffeine as part of that workout experience may not necessarily affect the rest of your day in terms of sleep patterns. So I wanted to make sure I included this. This is actually really great information that Marie Spano has shared as well. And so I thought about adding it in as part of today's presentation. Okay. I'm going to rock and roll with these slides because I was looking at the time. Okay, so let's talk about the timing of that pre and post workout nutrition based on what time of the day that you are working out. So if I have someone who is an early morning workout person, maybe you're in my boat where the only time I can work out is at 5 a.m. or, somewhere along those lines. So that pre-workout, consider have something pretty small and simple, primarily carbohydrate. So that could be a banana, maybe just half a banana, a small sports drink, a Greek yogurt cup, or a granola bar. And also too, if the thought of eating something super early in the morning before that morning workout does not seem like a great idea to you, you're like, dude, I can't do that. That's okay. What I will say though, is let's then be strategic with how you're eating the night before. So make sure that that evening meal or evening snack that you have before you go to bed does have some carbohydrate in there, as well as some protein. I think that I've had clients over the years that will try to taper their carbohydrates throughout the day for whatever various reasons they are doing that. And so they might have a low carb or carb-free dinner. If you're being physically active in the morning and you're really wanting to maximize those energy levels, I would implore you to try out what it would feel like to have some carbohydrate in that dinner meal and notice how that affects your performance in that early morning workout. And again, you may say like, hey, no, I'm good. I'm going to skip that recommendation. That's totally fine too. I just want to let you know what we would typically recommend to the athlete that does an early morning workout that can't stomach anything very early in the morning, but wants to maximize making sure that they have the best energy levels for that morning workout. And they may find that they have better energy levels because there was some carbohydrate that was present in that dinner meal or evening snack before they go to bed. So just take that into consideration. So that's what that pre-workout would look like. Post-workout, if you're doing that in the morning, maybe your breakfast is going to be serving as your recovery meal that may be happening within an hour after your workout. So that could be something like a smoothie where we've got some carbs and protein in there, whether that be fruit or Greek yogurt, a scoop of protein, maybe a little tablespoon of peanut butter, anything along those lines. Sometimes to make that smoothie feel a little bit more substantial and filling, I'll have some folks add in some avocado in there. So it's okay to have some fat in there. We just don't want it to be like overly greasy and just, 60% fat. Overnight oats, maybe doing something like an egg sandwich, cereal and milk with a boiled egg, peanut butter toast with a banana, or maybe a protein shake with adequate carbs. And the reason I say that is because you might have a protein shake, like one of those Premier Proteins. I know a lot of my clients like those. I like the taste of them as well, but they don't have a lot of carbohydrate in them. So I would say having that with maybe a banana or a cup of fruit or some other type of carbohydrate that you prefer or feel comfortable with can be a way to get that great amount of protein from that protein shake, but then also making sure that you've got adequate carbohydrate. And in terms of recovery nutrition, I would recommend about 30 grams, if not more. And so for those of us that have been eating very low carb, that can seem like a large amount, but just know that with a lot of the carbohydrate recommendations that I'm including in here, as far as the gram amounts, coincide very closely with what we would recommend for a diabetic patient. So something that is going to be carb consistent and carb conservative, it can just seem like a lot for someone who has been going extremely low carbohydrate for a long time. So again, it's not me trying to troll you or scare you. It's really just wanting to make sure that you're getting adequate carbohydrate to really enhance your energy levels during your workout. Okay. What if you are the type of person that works out during the lunch hour? So that's going to look like, depending on what time you ate breakfast and what time that workout is happening during the lunch hour, whenever you're taking that lunch, maybe that pre-workout snack is going to be a mid-morning snack, maybe like a banana with peanut butter or a cup of Greek yogurt. That post-workout nutrition could be your actual lunch. So that could be something like a deli sandwich with some fruit, your favorite protein shake with a banana, maybe a smoothie that includes some carbs and protein. At the end, I do have my contact information. If you're wanting some really great smoothie recipes that would serve as both some recipes that are specific to pre-workout and post-workout, feel free to shoot me an email because I can send that over to you. And then what if you're the late afternoon / early evening workout person? You're the type of person that is working out right after work. So that pre-workout nutrition, it could include an afternoon snack, depending on how long ago your lunch was compared to when you were working out. So I would say for the most part that an afternoon snack is going to be really helpful leading into a workout after work. So that could be your favorite protein or granola bar, maybe a little like an apple with a cheese wedge. Anything else that sounds yummy to you that's within that vein of like a carb and protein combination, or maybe even primarily carbohydrate, maybe having an apple on the drive to your workout. That post-workout nutrition is going to include your dinner meal. So it could be rice and veggies and your protein of choice. Or again, a smoothie is always a great option, or a salad that includes all macronutrients. And the reason I want to emphasize having all macronutrients is because I think sometimes we can get into this mode of making our salad exclusively vegetables, but it not having the energy containing macronutrients that we need, like making sure that there is some protein on that salad, that there is actually some form of fat that's on that salad, whether that be salad dressing or nuts or seeds, and also making sure that some carbohydrate is present with that salad, whether it's on the salad itself or on the side, because really that recovery nutrition is going to take having those macronutrients available to really help those muscles recover. And what about juicing or smoothies? So I do get this question a lot, and I'm taking a look at the time. And I just want to briefly say that juicing can be a great way to get the vitamins and minerals from that produce that you are, putting into that juice, but I would not use it as a meal replacement, because when you're juicing, you're getting rid of the fiber component, really anything that would make that juice like satisfying to you. So I'm okay with people using juicing as a supplement to their meal, like having it alongside their meal, but not as a replacement. So if you're like, oh, I hate eating raw vegetables all the time, or I want to get even more vitamins and minerals, have that juicing product along with your meal, but not necessarily as a replacement. Whereas with a smoothie, we're going to be blending up all that wonderful stuff and actually including everything that's part of that food. And you can add like so many different things within that smoothie. For some of my athletes, will even do a small amount of raw oats as a way to get in some carbohydrate to thicken up this smoothie. We can add in all kinds of produce, spinach, kale, frozen berries, bananas, Greek yogurt, acai, seeds, chia seeds, like all the different things, and really be able to drink that on the go. So I think smoothies are a fabulous, wonderful thing. However, if you're the type of person that's like, hey, with my taste buds, I need to switch things up every now and again. I'm tired of drinking my nutrition. Be cognizant of that, because you could easily get burnout on your smoothie. With hangry-free salads, I wanted to include this slide for everyone to reference back to. So aside from just those non-starchy veggies, which are going to be a great source, again, of water, fiber, vitamins, and minerals, let's make sure that we've got a good source of carbohydrate in there, that we're adding some protein to that salad, that we've got some source of fat. And so within these sections, I've kind of made some recommendations for ideas for how to get those type of macronutrients within that salad. Other various nutrition tips. I see that I have 2 minutes. So again, these are going to be things that you can refer to. What I will say, just really briefly, is that when you're looking at total carbohydrate for foods now with a new nutrition facts label, I love the fact that it now indicates what is your added sugars within the total sugars. Because before, with the old nutrition facts label, you would have a product and it would say sugars 14 grams. Well, I'd have a lot of clients that would be freaked out by that. They would say, Sheena, I don't like to eat yogurt because it has so much sugar. Well, because we, before the new nutrition facts label came out a few years ago, people were like, how do I know what that sugar is? Look at your ingredients label. And this is the way that the ingredients label still runs. Ingredients are listed in descending order by weight. So if the first couple ingredients of a product say things like skim milk, frozen strawberries, whatever, we'll know that the sugars in that yogurt are coming from natural sources. But if one of the first 3 or 4 ingredients is high fructose corn syrup or table sugar, we'll know that that product has a significant amount of added sugar. People don't have to be as cognizant of that with the ingredients label now that they exclusively put what is an added sugar versus the naturally occurring sugars in a product. But I wanted to make sure that I included that within your information as well. With the other information that you'll find in the supplemental section of these slides, it's really just kind of outlining some information in regards to how long it usually takes for us to process satisfaction and fullness, kind of being mindful of our pace of eating, and then also just kind of being aware of our hunger and fullness scale. I'll have some instructions with that in the notes section, but please know that I'm available for any questions that you have related to this. I think I got excited and tried to cram way too much information in 1 hour, but I wanted you guys to have some information related to what would be ideal timing for pre and post workout nutrition based on the time that you work out and what those benefits are. I know we'll have this presentation recorded, and I'll also be giving the slides to everyone as well. But I apologize for not getting to answer all questions, but just please feel free to email me through this process, because I love to be able to address all of those and send supplemental information related to those questions. So Randa, I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to put this together.
Yeah.
I think everybody loved it. They engaged throughout the whole presentation. So thank you for your time, and I will definitely email you about another class on keto, since a lot of people are interested in that. So
Absolutely.
all right, thanks everybody.